Good afternoon, 12 noon East Coast time. Carm Capriato, the original Town Hall Academy from Remarkable Results Radio. And today we are talking about selling your business valuation strategies. Now, we've talked about selling succession before. We absolutely have. In fact, you all have been on the podcast before. Thank you all for your contributions. It's really been great. But I decided to narrow down on getting a little deeper into the weeds on valuation strategies, and we're going to talk about that today. But first, I want to give a shout out to Jasper. Remember, Jasper, when your customer's vehicle engine or transmission fails, and it's not the end of the road for them, a remanufactured drivetrain product from Jasper Engines and Transmissions will give your customer's car a brand new lease on life. Go to jasperengines.com for more information. So glad to have you all here. With me is Greg Bunch, the owner of Aspen Auto Clinic, 5-store operation, Colorado Springs, Colorado, and the president of Transformers Institute that provides proven strategies to transform your business. So you mostly work with multi-shop owners, Greg, or people who want to be multi-shop owners, right?
Yes, we get a good combination of both. And people that what we want to call garage mahals, people that want to have, $2, $3, $4 million single locations. We've been able to help those folks as well.
Wow, garage mahals. I love that. Love that.
It's Bob an official term.
Bob Ward is with us from Warden LLC, and Bob believes that a perpetual business is profitable and sustainable without you as you prepare for sale or succession. And I love the strategy, being a perpetual business. I just love it, Bob, and thanks for being here.
Well, I appreciate it. Every owner aspires to have their business continue beyond their retirement. We want to always provide for death, disability, but more happily, they get to retire and get paid for their life's work, a true perpetual business.
Well, that's one of the reasons you're here, and you've also been a great contributor to the show. Thank you. And Joel Zaleski, partner at Cardinal Brokers. Joel started his career at PricewaterhouseCoopers before joining Monroe, Inc. as the Vice President of Acquisitions and Operations Support. He bought a whole bunch of shops and added them to their group, and now he's out doing deals, right, Joel?
That's right. Absolutely. I wanted to hang my own shingles, so to speak. And so that's what I've been doing the last year. Good
for you. And Joel was on before as we were also talking about our same topic here. Mm-hmm. So here's how I want to approach this, or at least I want to tell the audience a little bit of the strategy of this particular Town Hall Academy. I want to talk about the people side of the transaction, the place side of the transaction, call that location market. I want to talk about the profit of a deal structure and all of that, if you will. Add people, place, profit equals price. How you like the way I stitch that together? You like that, guys?
It's good.
Did you practice that?
I wrote that just 15 minutes ago.
I love it.
Because all of your great talking points that came into me. So let's start with the place thing. And Joel, I want to go to you about factors that impact valuation as far as the market conditions.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and that's I'll kind of talk about it from a macro perspective. I mean, there are certainly market conditions that we're seeing currently that have an impact on, the number of deals getting done, where they're getting done, et cetera. For example, interest rates. Interest rates in their marketplace remain very favorable for everyone's perspective, but certainly from a buyer's perspective, which means that there is a lot of cash out in the marketplace for companies and the consolidating type companies to get deals done. So I say that from a macro perspective and as a market condition. There are other market conditions certainly that are more micro, such as the location or the market in which companies are trying to expand in, that certainly have an impact on the valuation.
Are more markets sexier, if you will, than others?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are newer markets where where the consolidation trend has perhaps lagged compared to others. So for example, New York. New York is a very mature market. There's been a lot of consolidation that's happened over the last 15 years. There are newer markets where you also see a lot of economic growth. For example, North Carolina, in the Charlotte area, where there's been a lot of consolidation more recently there, and a lot of the large consolidating companies are trying to, expand their footprint into a market such as Charlotte. Florida is another good example where there's a lot of consolidation going on there. It's a hot market, for purposes of, these larger consolidating companies to expand their footprint.
So, Greg, the shop owners that you work with, do they realize when they want to make a purchase? Because I think you're really helping guys grow. Am I right, Greg?
Right.
And so that's why Greg's perspective is so important here. Joel and Bob are doing deals and helping people sell and or maybe find someone who wants to buy and grow. Greg's out there coaching people so that Joel and Bob will buy those places someday.
Right.
And maybe I'm stretching it a little bit, but you find different areas, strength of market around the country, like Joel said?
Well, I think almost every client that we have, they're not at the level of a Monroe or a Mavis or something like that. So they're looking in their market to, be the dominant player, get to 3 to 5 to 10 within their local market. So those guys are really based geographically for where their main shop is and what they think the opportunities are. So, we're not at a level where, like Joel was talking about, that, hey, let's pick, Atlanta, Georgia and I'm just making that up, is the hottest market out there. So they're all trying to get to Atlanta and put a 10, 15 together and be able to flip that over. Nobody's at that level that we're talking about right now. They're really working in their local markets. But everybody I talk to within their local markets, they know where the up and coming demographics are, what direction the city is growing, and where the top shops are. So they have a ground level expertise that you can run all the data through computers, but there is something about having boots on the ground and being able to really know what your market and what the vibe is within your community.
One more question to you, Greg, regarding
Sure.
that. When you're coaching someone or working with someone on expanding and going from 3 to 4 to 5 stores, are you working very carefully with the market and the demographic of where they want to grow to?
Oh, absolutely. And, a lot of us started out as technicians in the industry. So, we move forward and we have the technician mindset. And one of the thought processes that I have to overcome with people is, we're not looking for the lowest rent. That is not how you go pick the new location, especially if down the future we want to give Joel a call and say, hey, we packaged up 5, 6, 10 of these. We want to move from, hey, selling it to an employee, but we want to move and get a higher multiplier, sell it to a strategic buyer. We have to keep that in consideration. And I think we all know in real estate, location is very important. And so if it's on a main street, they got bays facing the main street, they maybe take something that has a fair amount of tires being moved through it. That's going to be a better target, even if it's $5,000 or $6,000 more in rent than one that's off the back street that may be making more money because it's the same guy who's been running it for 40 years and it's extremely profitable. When you package that all together, that may not be the best acquisition based on the exit strategy that person has. So we dissect that, and I tell them there's no cookie cutter. Every single deal is different, and you need to look at it. And as Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind. So what is the ultimate exit strategy? We work with, a shop that they have 5 brothers. And, I think the ultimate that the dad would love for each of the, there to be 5 shops with 5 brothers. That's a different strategy than packaging them up and talking to some of the big boys. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Bob, when it comes to the people side, you're so big in building a perpetual business, and I guess it's attractive to an owner to come in, or a person who wants to buy the business, realizing that the business can run without the leader.
For a business to truly have value, it needs to be able to operate successfully, at least at the level it is now when the owner departs. And I am not a consolidator. I am not a broker. I work with the current business owners to ensure that their business will continue beyond them. So 9 out of 10 times the transactions that I work on are key employees in the business. 1 in 10 is a family member. 9 in 10 of the strategies that I work with are key employees. So I'm not going to be the one to find buyers. There's already a buyer identified. 9 out of 10 times going to be internal. Occasionally someone from outside, and I will help with that. It's primarily taking a business, just like the guys said, they started it generally as technicians, perhaps a service advisor. They built a business from nothing. They survived the first 5 years, overcame all those challenges and difficulties, and built something of value that they would like to get paid for. But the opportunities for a consolidator to buy all of these independent auto repair shops, that's a very narrow market, as I'm sure Greg and Joel will say. It's not going to be 90% or 50% of these shops are going to get bought that way. But every owner would like to see their business continue, so they get paid, and the next owner has the opportunity to realize their dreams. The employees, community, and customers are all cared for.
So one of my 4 P's was people, and I think you kind of landed right there to
Let me expand on that just a little bit. Profits are the core of the business valuation. We're going to normalize the cash flow, find what's really coming out of the business that's attributable to the owner. And then there's going to be a market multiple that will equal the blue sky or goodwill value. And then you've got the assets. But the goodwill value is the largest component. And where do the profits come from? Profits come from the people. It's not the stuff in the business. So the key, and 3 of the 6 metrics that I use in my proprietary valuation formula are all based on people. And I'll just share them right now. One is a function of the independence of the business from the owner. Can the owner depart and the business is going to purr along without? How long has the sales staff, the customer-facing staff been there? How likely are they going to stay? And then the third is the production staff, the technicians. If you've got high turnover in a business, you've got instability. You've got longevity and systems in place, and that business can run without the owner. That's going to deserve a premium valuation, Carm.
We need to talk about that right now, since you brought that up. And, as a factor of EBITDA, I know that shop owners have said to me, yeah, I spent some time in the shop. I got a little yellow pad out and I started to write down what my tire machine cost me when I bought it new. And they start going through, oh, there's inventory and there's 400 gallons of oil over there. And they add it all up and they say, wow, okay, $500,000. Well, the business is, God, they got to pay me $500,000 for everything else that I'm doing. I have $1 million business. And that seems to be the way that a lot of people think that haven't become part of a 20 group or coaching and haven't studied this. And the reason that we do these shows is that we help people in their personal network to learn this stuff. So when we evaluate the business and we're looking for that big piece of, ooh, who will pay me for all these years of growing this great business so I can transition it to someone, that's called goodwill. And it is a factor of what's called EBITDA. I'd love for you 3 to tackle that, because I think that may be the biggest component for someone thinking about what can I sell my business for, but there's so much work underneath to get to that level. Who wants to start?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I can certainly talk to it. Certainly, from a buyer's perspective, I'll talk to it a little bit. I'm sure Bob can add some more perspective. I talk about it from the terminology of EBITDA or adjusted EBITDA, which I think Bob's looking at it the same way. He calls it maybe something a little bit different, normalized cash flow. But they really fundamentally mean the same thing. I mean, we talked before. Go ahead,
Joe,
Kurt.
explain what EBITDA is to our listener.
Yeah, so EBITDA is earnings before interest, depreciation, taxes, and amortization. So you take the net profit of your business and you add back depreciation that's being run through the business, taxes that are being run through the business, any interest that you're paying. So those non-cash type items, those expenses that have a multi-year run out to them oftentimes. You use that to normalize your profit or the free cash flow of the business to get you to, all right, how much does this business really put off? And that's the way that buyers are going to look at it, for the basis of formulating what they're willing to pay you for your business. So adjusted EBITDA. Now, one item that I didn't talk about is the adjusted side of it, meaning, what buyers will do as well is they will give sellers the benefit of owner-related adjustments, meaning if the seller in owning that business is paying for their cell phone, maybe some vehicle expenses, maybe there are some family members involved in the business. Those expenses that are not inherent in running the business in the future, those are often added back as well, or allowed to be added back for purposes of forming the valuation. So we refer to it as adjusted EBITDA.
Which is a big factor in why an accountant should be part of a transaction like this, so that they can do that heavy lifting for you? Or would this be something an owner would do?
No, I think, it sounds perhaps more complicated than it really is. I think most owners, at least that I talk to, once you explain what it is, they very quickly understand the number that that we're talking about. I think where owners sometimes need a little bit of coaching is, all right, what are those owner related adjustments that I can in fact add back, or that a buyer will give me credit for?
Yeah.
And but quite frankly, it's not that complicated. I mean, I don't necessarily think a CPA is necessarily to be involved, but more often than not, they are, because they're going to their CPAs or whoever is helping them prepare their taxes at the end of the year.
Taxes, the profit and loss statement. And I think it's a great point. I think this could be a really big takeaway from this episode, is that that you're learning as a service professional, shop owner, what you need to do and prepare when you put the shingle up.
That's absolutely right.
With me helping people on the buying side of these businesses, there's two ways to do that. One is they find something that's publicly listed, and, obviously a business broker is involved in that. And the business brokers actually, this is one of their expertise. What they get paid for is creating that owner value number as high as possible and adding everything back. And so on those cases, we help our clients work and really figure out what that true net profit is to come up with their offer. And then on the other side, we're bringing training to the market for, okay, you get a guy's financials, you're going to want documents out of the point of sale system. You're going to want to see P&Ls. You're going to want to see tax returns, and how to do our own evaluation of that to come up with what we believe the value would be. Because you're right, a lot of shop owners, the joke is everybody wants $1 million. And, well, why? Well, because that's what I want, right? That's what I need. Without really basis of going, okay, how did you come to that number? What multiplier did you use? What's your EBITDA? And then you get the blank stare, which is okay, because a lot of people aren't, that's not the way what they're focused on. They're focused on, how much they make, how much they put in their bank, how much they can take out without hurting the business. They're not thinking through that process. So whether it's, on the business broker side, or from, one of my clients being able to Joe comes to them and says, hey, I want to retire. You're a good shop owner. Do you want to buy my business? Let's sit down and have coffee. Okay, first thing, obviously get an NDA signed, and let's start peeling back and looking at those finances. And we've got some guys that are really getting sharp at looking at other businesses, P&Ls and stuff, and being able to discern it, even if it's not set up the same way that would be through a business broker.
NDA, non-disclosure agreement, everyone, so that we have so many acronyms around. I just wanted to help people.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. Bob, your perspective on this?
Well, because I do not have cash buyers like the other two gentlemen are working to find for our shop owners, I am working with the average shop owner out there that is not going to have the benefit of someone writing a big check. So in the some 50 transactions I've done in my career, one wrote a check. The others had very, very modest means, and the structures were a transition over time. 5-7 years is pretty typical, where the seller is transitioning out of the business duties, responsibilities, and the key employee is assuming those duties and responsibilities and authority and acquiring an equity percentage over time for an ultimate buyout. Now, I want to point out in that type of a transaction where you're not just getting a big check and walking away, the true value that owners need to consider is all of the cash flow and benefits of their business, such as the continuing pay and dividends from that transition period of time, that 5 to 7 years of continuing cash flow, the rent that they are most likely getting, since most are owners of the real estate, and then the ultimate sale value of the property later. So in order to get all of those benefits, the transaction must be successful, hence the business needs to be perpetual, it needs to continue. So for my audience, this is the one that's not going to get a $500,000 or $1 million check and walk away. This is going to be a structured transition that has creative financing, and everybody's going to benefit, and all that value that the owners have created over 20, 30, 40 years is going to get realized.
Well, that's a good reason that you're here, and I like that perspective also. And there's an awful lot, Greg. I mean, you probably have heard of a lot of transactions that have that internal candidate.
Right. So, and that was a question actually, Bob, you said you've done over 50 of these transactions?
Yes, and I do everything from the beginning, the valuation, solve for financing, and all the legal details. Just put the whole thing together, and it takes about an average of a year to get all of that done.
Right. So, as my clients go out there and they're looking for acquisitions, the thing that gets brought up is owner finance, which I assume out of your 50 deals, except for that one that somebody wrote a check, there's an element of owner finance embedded within the deal, right?
Well, there's actually 4 potential ways for that ultimate terminal value to get paid. So I'm just going to give you a real short illustration that over, say, 5 years, we've created a way for the buyer to accumulate, say, 35% equivalent equity in the business. And now they got to pay out that last 65% 5 years from now. They either have the money, that's option A, which is virtually zero. Option B, they can get the financing from a bank, which is still really hard for the younger buyers to be able to do. Option C is pure owner financing, carrying the note. And option D is we extend the 5 years to 6 and get a little more equity, or extend it to 7 to get that final down. So there's the 4 ways of that terminal point.
So the reason I bring that up, some of the, if I can help facilitate a strong buyer, meaning the guy already has 3 or 4 locations, he's got a strong, financial statement, I'm finding that the owners are more willing to talk owner carry than, hey, I want to sell it to a key employee that, there's an inherent higher risk. And I assume that's where your company steps in and works ways to mitigate that risk and set it up to make that buyer feel more comfortable in that circumstance, or the seller, I'm sorry.
Yeah, perfectly said. And actually, we do need both parties to be comfortable, because nothing will get done without that comfort, confidence to make sure that the end result is what everybody needs. You said it very well. Thank you.
Hey, Bob, let me ask you a question. I'm an internal candidate. Greg is selling me his business, and we worked a 5-year deal to through the profitability of the company to own an equity position of 35%. And you had mentioned that. Is that good enough for the SBA?
SBA is a backstop or a guarantor of a regular bank. So if the bank underwrites a loan and they're willing to give you 75% of your actual collateral, which usually is not very much for a younger buyer. They just don't have a lot of assets. That would be different than what Greg's talking about. There's 5 locations, and it's easy for them to have access to capital. For the market that I work in, capital is scarce. We need to be a little more creative and build that confidence. So that if a regular bank would lend 75%, the bank may be willing to lend 85 or 90% because the SBA would take that first 15% of risk. So you still have to have regular credit underwriting to get an SBA backstop.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. Interesting. We've done some shows on this, and the discussion continues to be almost exactly the same. Hey, do you know the Jasper story, everyone? Well, Jasper has over 2,000 associates in 3 manufacturing facilities, 2 distribution centers, and 45 branch offices all across the country. And they're working hard to produce, transport, and deliver to you the perfect product. And that's what they do best at Jasper. Keep customers happy so you can keep your customer happy. Thanks, Jasper, for supporting the Town Hall Academy. Hey, Joel, can we do a little discussion on how to increase, or the whole team here? Joel, I'd
Sure.
like you to start it off. How to increase the valuation of our business?
Yeah, so anytime someone's starting to think about selling or potentially selling their business, there are certainly steps that they can be thinking about and taking that ultimately could impact, in many cases, significantly impact the valuation. I think that the first and foremost one is a point that Greg made up or pointed to earlier, is with respect to rents. What we find oftentimes is that that the sellers or the business owners will also own the real estate. And what I think is very important is when you have a business that's owned by the same individual as the real estate, that they are charging the business market rents. I can tell you, in many situations, the business is not paying their full share of rents. They're just paying something significantly lower than market rents. And, I think when it comes to time to value the business, those market rents are a subtraction from the overall valuation, meaning if the current business is only paying half of the market rents, but going forward, whoever buys that store has to pay, a market rent, that's going to be a subtraction from the overall EBITDA number, which drives down the overall valuation.
Are you suggesting, if you're going to plan to sell or succeed, that you start righting the ship a little bit?
That's right. Yeah, start normalizing the P&L. I think it's extremely important that a business owner has full visibility of all the expenses that they need to be paid out of the business. And one of those is the business paying its full share of the rent. And I think that that's one that we often have to make adjustments for as part of the valuation, because the store isn't paying.
You're right. That's my point. If there was a shop owner who knocked on the door of a shop owner next town over and said, "Hey, I'm looking to, I want to come in the marketplace. Do you have interest in selling?" Okay, I haven't had a chance to normalize my P&L, but if I sat down with the potential buyer, it shouldn't be that difficult to explain. I've been charging myself a whole lot lower rent.
Sure. I mean, I also look at it from the perspective of, I think any business owner, they're driven by the results of the business. I think it's human nature that you want to be profitable, because you want to show a profit of the business to keep you pushing sales, keep your team pushing sales. And so if that business isn't absorbing all the expenses that it really needs to, are you really realizing the full opportunity in that store, if that makes sense? And I'm sure, Greg, that's something that you probably come across as part of your coaching, or at
Absolutely.
least have talked to the shop owners about.
Greg, any great examples, without mentioning names, that you can share so that our listener can absorb some of the moves they need to make?
Yeah, mine was, and so, right, a lot of people have read my biography. I started as a technician, worked my way up in this business. And, the joke is that technicians make really bad car salesmen, because we buy a car off a customer and we think, hey, all I got to do is put a water pump on it and I can flip this and make $1,500. Well, then you find out the brakes are bad, and then it's got an oil leak. And then by the time you're into it, because we're mechanics, we want to fix everything on the car before we sell it. And then we find out that, we've put $2,500 into a $2,000 car, and we should just go back to fixing cars. So a lot of technicians that want to sell their business look at the same thing. Well, I got to fix everything up. Everything's got to be perfect before I sell it, thinking that all that money is going to come back to them on the sale. And so there's a balance there in, how much do you fix it up How much new equipment do you buy? Because if you think about it, and I'll just throw out, I know that, multipliers could be 2 to 9 or 10 nowadays, but let's just, for simple math, say it's a 4 times multiplier you're going to get for your business. You go out and you buy a $100 printer. When you could have got by with the old one, that could cost you $400 of when you sell the business, what could have gone in your pocket. So, you don't want to sell something that's just everything's got to be replaced, because that's going to devalue it. But you don't want to put all brand new equipment and do everything that, make it a brand new business too, because you're not going to get your money back on fixing every little thing within the business.
I think that's a very important point that people don't necessarily understand, unless you're talking an asset sale. Am I right, Craig?
Right. One of the businesses we did an evaluation on, and we were pretty far off from what the owner wanted to what we were willing to pay. And so we walked away from it. And the accountant pointed out that all of his equipment was completely depreciated. So even before taking a tour in the building, I knew that, his lifts are 15 or 20 years old. He knew the strategy to go, I'm not going to put a bunch of money into this. I'm going to, so whoever bought it, and somebody did buy it, I know that they're going to have to do a lot of equipment upgrades that they probably didn't think about when they bought it, because they didn't come from the industry and they didn't look at that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody want to tackle the multiplier? I mean, Greg, you brought it up. It's been discussed earlier in this episode, and you said, anywhere from I don't know, 4 to 10 or wherever the numbers are.
I've seen 1.5, but
yeah, okay.
And I know that Bob, one of his P's was the people. A lot of these shops that it's going to be a serious downturn, because the owner runs everything. The owner's the manager. The owner's underpaid. And so, yeah, we're making good money, but at the end of the day, if someone's going to buy it and not go run it themselves, which, is a different model than what, Bob's talking about, probably this key employee is going to step into that role. But what Joel's talking about is somebody's got to step into that role, and that may be a 6-figure person that needs to go in there and run it. And that's got to be calculated into it. So if that person doesn't exist, that puts a higher risk on the buyer that, hey, can I hire the right person? Are they going to be a cultural fit? How are the customers going to react when Joe, the shop owner that's been there 20 years, is gone? How are the employees going to react, when they love working for Bob and now all of a sudden, this new guy comes in? It just adds risk. And when you add risk, you lower the multiplier.
And I'll add, I use a valuation multiplier that can be anywhere from 0. We really don't want to be buying this business except for the assets. And people don't want to buy a bunch of used equipment. They want to buy the cash flow. So the multipliers that I work with are typically 0 to 5, with the average being 2.5 to 3. And the simple way I would like to suggest owners look at this, to really take all these nuances and details and blend them down just a little bit, distill them, is businesses have stuff to sell. Furniture, fixtures, equipment, used phone systems, lifts, stuff. That's not where the value is. That stuff is going to be at liquidation value. eBay, Craigslist. That's not what someone wants to buy. They want to buy the sustainability of that cash flow. And as Joel mentioned, and Greg as well, owners need to understand the truth of their financials. They need to know what that true seller's discretionary cash flow is. Adjusting for their salaries, adjusting for rent, adjusting for all those personal things that these guys already mentioned. You get the true cash flow. And then you've got the multiplier, which we're talking about now. And I would like everybody to think of that's listening to this, that multiple is really a confidence factor by the buyer of how well that cash flow will be sustained. The higher the confidence that we're going to have at least that cash flow when the owner steps away, the higher the value will be. And if the owner leaves, and all the goodwill and the customer relations and the employee relations and the institutional knowledge, if all that goes away with the owner, that's a very low valuation. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll add to that, Bob. I mean, I think one, from where, the space that I'm doing deals in, I think the confidence factor is absolutely first and foremost. I think the other thing that you find with the larger strategic buyers that are doing deals is also the synergies that they're able to get out of the business. Now, I think, in your transactions where it's, one single owner buying, a single owner, you don't necessarily have those synergies that drive up a multiple. Where if I'm selling stores to a consolidator that has 1,000 stores already, well, they're purchasing product and tires and equipment, et cetera, for much less, and so they're able to get more synergies out of it, which also drives up the multiple. So, I think Bob, you
drive up the multiple.
Absolutely, fair point. It could drive up the multiple, but I would tell you that on average, we're dealing more in the 5 to 10, maybe somewhere in the average of 6 to 7 multiple. But that's a function of doing deals with the much larger buyers, and I think the difference there are the synergies that they're able to get, which drives up the price.
No, that's a great point. If you're looking to grow, like Greg's group does, they're looking to add stores and potentially sell to a regional consolidator and then up the chain. And,
Mm-hmm.
The big dog eats the medium dog eats the little dog. The higher the multiple can be if you've developed the right business. One of the points I want to make is there's going to be people listening to this not only today and next week, but way into the future, because podcasts will live out there evergreen. I just want to be crystal clear what the multiple means. If your business is throwing out $100,000 a year, all this normalized adjustable number, and someone believes it's sustainable and I want this, and they say, I'll give you 200,000 for the business. Well, the that times 2 is that goodwill factor. And as Greg was saying, God, if I was making, $500,000 a year and somebody wanted to pay me 10 times that, that's a really big number. And it goes back to the whole thing and the reason that we're trying to drag so many people over the line in profitability in this automotive aftermarket of ours is that as buyers become more sophisticated, and Greg, tell me, Bob, if I'm right or wrong here, you've got to run a better, stronger, smarter, more profitable business. And you've got to go out and get help to do that just in your very own world of having a comfort level and earning the right kind of money. We can't talk about this enough. And the thing I love about this kind of podcast is if we can talk about selling and valuations, it may prompt people to run a better business. Right, Greg?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was, I spoke on that for 4 hours at the Worldpac Expo last year, and they're having me back to speak this year. Perfect. On that exact topic. Good. Because it is such an important topic. And, there's a couple ways to go about, right? They can fix up their business. They could do an acquisition. They could go from 1 to 3 and really have a good, solid business with a top EBITDA and get top dollar for it. Or some of these folks, I hate to say it, they're in their twilight years, they're burned out, they're tired. Hopefully they've squirreled enough money away to retire off of, plus their Social Security. And really at the end of the day, like Bob said, maybe they were 0, a half, or 1. They really don't have a lot of options to sell. And if you look on Craigslist or eBay, you'll find shops are closing and it's a fire sale. They try and get 50 grand for the equipment, the phone number, and the database, and they're retiring and not living on very much. But it's sad because all that work that they put into it for 20, 30 years, they never thought of it that I need to build this thing to sell it, that this is my retirement asset. They just looked at it as a glorified job. And at the end of the day, it can be a sad situation, but you know what? Some people are okay with it. Some people are perfectly fine. They've paid off their house. They've paid off some other investments, and they didn't look at their business as their retirement. But I think that, more and more of the audience that are listening to the show are looking at, how do I build a business that ultimately, whether it's 2 years from now or 20 years from now, is a sellable asset as the consolidation wave rolls through our industry.
Thanks for that. Hey, one more shout out to Jasper. Bob, 1 second. I'll give you your moment here. At Jasper Engines and Transmissions, quality and customer service is their number one goal, and their associates take pride in their work as it shows in the quality drivetrain products they produce. Their quality and customer service has kept Jasper growing for 76 years. Bob, you were going to say?
I was going to say, Greg made such a good point that most people, I'm going to say it's 90% don't plan for the end of their working years. There just isn't a plan. And these are among the finest people in the United States, the entrepreneurs who have created something of value and have employed people and supported families and customers. They deserve to have something more. They just need to plan for it. And if they plan early, as I say, there's always a place to start. You could be 25 and starting a business. You can start then for the future. If you plan, not only will you realize more at the end, but you'll be such a much better operator during those years that Greg was talking about. Rather than wait to fine tune your business when you're 62, fine tune it when you're 35 and make a lot more money along the way and build value in those options.
Okay. Hey, I think we lost Joel. Joel, can you hear us at all? Obviously, Joel can't hear us. He lost his speakers. Is there a mute button that you should be worried about, Joel? Maybe I should put a little sign up here about a mute button. But anyway, Joel, mute. I
can hear you a little better.
Oh, you're back.
You
All right, beautiful. All right,
sorry about that.
Well, look, let's wind this thing down, and with this thought in my mind. And we started with people, place, profits equals price. And let me throw this thought that I have at you, and I'd love to hear all of your comments and summary here at the end. The seller has to understand that people are willing to pay good money for a well-run operating business that has people and processes in play and market share. And they're going to want to steal my business. Yeah, if they want the location and you have nothing else to sell. And I think that's the point. Bob, you made the greatest point in the world. Fix your business at 35, not at 62.
Well, we all came from a background that was not business related. We came from a technical background, like almost every small business owner. So you start with this dream of taking a technical skill and becoming an owner. The key is, are you truly becoming an owner and a business person? And that's where Greg and other coaches and 20 groups, et cetera, come in. They're very, very, very valuable.
I'll give you your final word, Greg. Sum this up for us, man.
I'm excited that you're doing this show, Carm. I think it's huge what you're bringing to the industry and this kind of talk and education. And my hope is that there's folks out there that aren't too busy wrenching to stop and listen to this, because we are truly talking about the future of our industry and what it's going to look like. And, I think I shared this with you on the show before. The whole reason I call my coaching training group Transformers is because I want to be the biggest part I can be to transform the automotive industry. And it goes right back to what Bob said. You got to transform the owners from a technical, I'm the best technician in town mentality to I'm going to be the best business owner. If we do that, we're going to take the black eye off of our industry. So there's a lot to this whole subject. And again, thank you, Carm, and to Jasper for making this a reality and bringing light to this.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate that. Now you're motivating me to get on my soapbox.
You what?
This past Monday, I did a For the Record episode on struggling shops, and I did it. I came back from ASTE out in North Carolina from the IGONC. And I met some people that were there because their shops were struggling and they were there to learn. I saw people raise their hand and say, you see these 35-year-old somethings, husband and wife, they're in this perpetual deep, whole spiral. And I ranted on the fact that you need to admit, fear is making you scared. It is putting you in a position you aren't healthy at. Please go listen to For the Record. It came out Monday, and I did 10 minutes on what we have to, what the struggling shop owners need to do. But I also put the challenge out to the successful people to reach out and have coffee with someone, make a friend. Every single successful shop owner today came from that holy hell.
Right.
There
And
you
it's
go,
not just
Greg.
in our industry. Bob said it. This is the backbone of the United States is small business, and it's the technician, whether it's a HVAC, a cook.
Right.
There's it's all over the place.
I love to cook. Can't run a restaurant. Love to cook.
Right.
That it's the same story over and over again. So thank you for those kind words and for allowing me to get up and say it's time, everybody. Joel, you have the last word.
Yeah, listen, I think this is a great topic. I'll reiterate what the rest of the panelists said. I think it's important that owners, they get busy with their day-to-days. I mean, they're taking care of customers and taking care of running a successful business. But I think it's important that, at some point, periodically, that these owners, think about things like, valuation, think about things like what's my succession plan. No one thinks about, what could happen, I think it's important that if shop owners don't have a succession plan, don't have a family member that's going to take it over or a key employee that, like that Bob deals with, I think it's important that they really start to put those plans in place to plan for the future. I think that there is an aging population out there of shop owners, and I think there's been a lot of consolidation, as we all know, in this space over the last 10 or 15 years, but I think that, that's only going to accelerate over the next 10 years because of that. So,
right.
So I think getting that succession planning and starting to think about these type of topics are extremely important, even if it's not, they're looking to retire tomorrow. Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10 years from now, but it's important that they lay the foundations now to do that.
Hey, thanks for that. And by the way, Greg and I, along with Jason Rainey and Rick Schwartz, are doing a panel discussion at Apex on this very, very subject. We're going to go in a whole lot deeper. We're really talking about Aftermarket 2030. What's this whole consolidation thing going to look like, and how are we going to get there? And of course, if there's opportunities to buy or sell and grow. So thank you for being on that panel, Greg. It'll be just in a few weeks. And hey, everyone, thanks for being here. What's that?
I can't believe it's coming up so fast. But yes.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Hey, thanks for being here, Town Hall Academy. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much.